Who actually controls AI today? The people building it, the platforms deploying it, or the governments trying to regulate it? Welcome to the XTraw AI Monthly News Roundup for January 2026, where we cut through the noise and focus on what truly matters in the global AI landscape. January wasn't just another busy month for AI. It marked a clear shift from massive infrastructure investments and the rise of agentic AI to deep platform alliances and regulations finally going live. We're seeing AI move from experimentation to power, control, and accountability. As always, you're joined by Raghu, along with his regular AI partners in crime, Manjeet, Lukas, and Sesh, bringing multiple lenses across enterprise, platforms, policy, and real-world impact. This isn't about headlines. It's about understanding what changed, why it matters, and what it means for leaders navigating 2026. Let's get into it.
All right, welcome back, folks. I know this is our first monthly roundup news in the year 2026. We all know that things have been pretty busy and pretty crazy here, as always. So welcome back, Lukas, Manjeet, and Sesh. How have you been?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, new year and new energy, so all good on my sides.
Yeah, same here. Excited. Look forward to this every month. So good to see you guys.
Right. So without further ado, I think let's get started. So I know a lot of things are happening in the context of the AI news that we cover. Again, we can go around the table with all the 4 different categories that we do. So Manjeet, do you want to start? Which category you want to pick up on the product launches or ecosystem or ethics or infrastructure and investments? What is that most, you think most intriguing?
Yeah, so maybe I think January is always a new month, and then CES is there, and then you have like Davos conference. And so I think that's and these are like big deals in a sense, right? And I always look at Davos as, hey, all the wealthy people comes in their helicopters or flights, and then they talk about world economy and what's happening in there. But I think the thing surprising to me at a kind of very high level before we go into these buckets. For example, I was looking at CES as expected, a lot of robotics demos, and then of course, commercial robotics and home and a lot more, the AI showing up in every type of device in a way. And I was hoping like somebody will launch some sort of AI companion, right? We're all waiting for. And I think it's happening. I'll talk about it later. I think the most interesting AI project, chatbot. That was, I think, the same, around jobs. And I saw the both side. People were debating, some leaders said maybe we are going to create more jobs, some like less jobs. So I'm pretty convinced it will be a net deficit, not net kind of, add on total number of jobs. So that's kind of the main summary. The other high level thing that's very relevant to, let's say, me and like any of you work in SaaS, all the SaaS companies are taking, even though, like if you look at Microsoft or ServiceNow and others, they are beating expectation. Stock, which was already down, they dipped another 10%, and it's very hard to a little bit of explain. Of course, you have the thesis of the future, but to me, I think it's without having any real substance, it's too much overreaction. Just looking at these, cloud code and those demos, I think it's Like these companies are still growing, still printing money and profits and all. So it's curious to hear, maybe just kind of at a more macro level before we go into what other things, what's happening in the stock market or anything you may have picked up in Davos or any from that themes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's go to you, Sesh. I think what are your thoughts before we get into these different categorization of the buckets? What's your big high level picture that you saw in the month of Jan?
I think we'll probably get into the details when we talk in the various categories. But broadly, I mean, there's a lot of focus on AI during Davos. There's also some interesting like buzzwords where there was when there was a discussion about displacing jobs, growth. I heard somebody made a comment that this is unavoidable because um, it's human tendency that we always want to be richer and lazier, and AI is just going to facilitate that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there was this interview by the interview with Demis Havis and Anthropic co-founder, which was pretty interesting. And this question was also posed to him about AI displacing jobs, and of course, this standard answer that, as always, when farming was getting automated, people found jobs in factories where they were building machines for automation. So that is a continuous life cycle um, in the society. But he did, of course, share that um, the rapid change of this, recursive innovation because of the AI. This actually is so rapid that there is not enough time for even policy, even for people to ramp up and figure out what is the next thing. So to that extent, some policy decision is definitely needed to
Mm-hmm.
make this viable for the next generation. Um, of course, nobody mentioned about what exactly the policy decision is, but this is an interesting observation coming from the capitalists that they feel that this is important policy
Right.
decision to ensure that displacement is kind of throttled or at least handled more in a measured way. So that was some takeaways for me from the various Davos interviews and discussions.
Right.
I
Right.
wanna I wanna jump in for a second because
Sure.
Manjeet
Sure.
said
Go ahead,
something very
Lukas.
important, and I want to
Right.
give a take on it because I think that's for me a theme that we still don't understand AI very well, and I think there is still a lot of misconceptions, not about the news or anything. For instance, what you said, Manjeet, it's just like, for instance, you pointed out that it's an overreaction to penalize all SaaS companies because AI might have an outsized impact. I think there is a big difference whether you're talking about a company that is the backbone and makes sure you have a compliant P&L and L and you pay your taxes, or you have a additional lift like I don't know, like I use voice to text AI or services, right? I think one is very superficial, can be easily replaced.
Mm-hmm.
The other one cannot be replaced. So I think that SaaS companies are not all alike, but the market right now treats them as if they were all the same. And I would say we will see some SaaS companies will be foundational, like infrastructure, and you would want that to be there. You don't want an agent to second guess every time you're in an HR process. What are the current regulations in one place or the other? You want rock solid infrastructure at the bottom. And some SaaS companies that don't provide this system of record, they might be more easily displaced. And putting everything into one perspective and pretending that every SaaS company is the same, I think is either wrong or an opportunity to be smarter than the rest of the people. And I I'm not saying that, for instance, if you're a company which deals in like being the foundational layer, that everything will be rosy. But I'm certain that we're not like differentiating enough what's happening. And I think for me, that's a theme. And I will hopefully be short and concise, but throughout the news, I will try to add like where I feel like there's misconceptions that where we're just too like quick to judge with AI.
Right, right.
Right.
I totally agree. I think you articulated it in a good way, Lucas, because all the other things that matters like data and governance and security and distribution and customer relationship and people are not sure why they are. And these companies have built that in last 20 years. Those things are not easy to build. Uh, and now all of them are just kind of trying to hire like what I'm seeing is Anthropic is, of course, their focus is on enterprise, right? They pick their lane, and then I think that's a great strategy. And now they're hiring people from Salesforce and ServiceNow and like all the figure it out. Like how do we price it? How do we take it go to market? And then, but this is the muscle that takes years and years. There is no existing playbook that you can go there and just replay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
coming back to you, Manjeet.
Mhm.
Let's continue our conversation, and maybe we'll get into the categorization buckets. I know there's a lot of we see that there is a lot of infrastructure and investments going on, right? I think there
Right.
is NVIDIA has announced its next generation Rubin AI platform. It's positioning it as the backbone for
Mhm.
all these hyperscale AI factories and these trillion parameter model training. And then again, we see OpenAI entered into several rounds of discussions, and they are raising a lot of funding. So, what are your
Right.
thoughts? And of course, all the global these hyperscalers accelerated their AI data center build outs. They're also
Right.
reinforcing quite a bit on this, getting this competitive moat. What are your thoughts? I think in this bucket of generally when we talk about infrastructure and investments, and now that we are kicking off this new year, Jan
Mhm.
2026. Yep.
Yeah. I think there's two net new things that I'm, other than, hey, build out more capacity, more data center. In fact, Microsoft today in their earnings, they said, hey, we could have made more money, but we don't have the capacity. So I think that theme's continued since kind of, mid last year. But one thing you have noticed, like you're talking about NVIDIA, right, is like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
who is going to, the gravity will slowly shift more from pre-training and post-training to more inferencing. So I don't think we talked about, let's say, NVIDIA went ahead and they bought, purchased Grok, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
Grok has the
Mm-hmm.
fastest inference, as an example. They saw that, hey, what Google is doing, and with their, Flash model combined with when you run in on their own kind of, more cheaper TPUs, which consumes even less energy. So it becomes much more optimized, and your CTS really you want to bring it down. I think for inference, there will be a race to the bottom to bring CTS as cheap as your regular Google search.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're already seeing some signals, and right, I mean, Jensen is smart, and he's like, okay, and this, we're already on the kind of GPU world, like training, post training, and everything. Now let me figure out more of this, more cheaper and fastest kind of inferencing strategy. Um, I'm seeing a big shortage of memory, all the DRAM, and if any of you, even if you have invested, let's say $100 in Micron or any of these, so I think you should get together and you should throw a party. That money, if you haven't looked at your portfolio, it has really, 10x, literally in last 9 months. So now I think it's going into not just bigger and more going into this component level. Hey, I'm building this big, 2 gigawatts or 3 gigawatt capacity. Holy shit, I don't have the memory to to procure it. So that's kind of two things I noticed. More focused gravity toward inference, And then this, energy we talked about. So to me,
Right.
what I noticed is the memory.
Right. So coming to you, Lucas, I think what is your take on this bucket? I think we keep talking quite a bit about the infrastructure and investments. What is your take on that in the month of Jan?
So I will go again, maybe not contrarian, but with a spin.
Mm-hmm.
The investment, as Manjeet and others have mentioned, is only going up. At the same time, big companies are announcing major layoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Amazon has announced 16,000 people being laid off. And I would say a lot of the people are assuming that maybe we're getting into the territory of bubbles being close to bursting. Because obviously, if they lay off people, it must be
Mm-hmm.
really bad. And I would say that's a miscalculation. I think just what Manjeet said to be actually like 100% true, that most companies could make even more money if they had more infrastructure. They're not laying off people because they don't believe in AI. They're laying off people so they can put even more money into AI because for them, it's not like how much money do I make? Maybe it's like this is the one thing that's holding us back. And it feels more and more, it's not about the revenue, even. It's like either you're one of the top dogs and you play the game, or you are just a bystander. And I don't live in Silicon Valley anymore, but I would say not that everything is driven by ego, but I do believe that a couple of people out there see it as their mission to be part of this come high water or hell or whatever, right? It's just existential. And so whenever people say like, oh, surely layoffs and even more like money being spent on that, that's the bubble that's coming screeching in. And I'm like, no, they're hyper focused and it will be even more than what we saw before and what we expected. And maybe one last thing where I feel like people are waking up to this fact. Last time Meta announced that they would spend more on infrastructure, they were
Mm-hmm.
penalized. They were like the share value dropped. Like recently, this week, Meta
Yeah.
announced we'll put even more into infrastructure. What happened? People were like, that's amazing. Go ahead, do it. And I think sometimes maybe if the rationale is not even clear, the market is smart because they're seeing what's really going on there. And so that's my slightly contrarian take on the infrastructure situation.
Right. Right. So coming to you, Sesh, I think what is your take on this in this bucket of infrastructure and investments that going on in this month of Jan?
Yeah, that's interesting. Just to extend on Manjeet's point, right? Micron, my friend in Singapore was saying that they've made a $24 billion memory infrastructure investment in Singapore. So
Wow.
that and of course there's some of others who are in SanDisks and you probably will know like their stock is going through the roof. While everybody talks about Nvidia and Broadcom, the as they say during gold rush, the shovel companies get to gain more than actually the gold diggers. So this seems to be a typical case, right? So a plus one to what Manjeet said, right? So um, just to take a different thought process, right? What is also interesting is that there are new kind of investments that are coming through as a result of infrastructure, right? So we always saw in the last year the hyperscalers like AWS, Azure, Google, they're doing the software platforms focused on AI. And then we also heard about like this so-called neo clouds, like CoreWeave, Lambda, Crusoe. They're doing like GPU operations, so to say, if you say. And then what was interesting is a couple of weeks back we heard about this. I think last 2 months back we also spoke about Blackstone.
Right.
Uh, And now last month, I think in this January, we also saw a new category from Brookfield Radiant. They they kind of announced a huge investment in what is called a new category called GPU compute, right?
Mhm.
So this isn't like another cloud provider, which is fundamentally software and scaling. Uh, and this is more of finance entering more the AI stack directly in terms of physical assets. They are leasing GPU services to enterprises. It's almost like real estate or energy. And so the Brookfield, they're not selling like cloud or AI platforms like others. It's selling physical AI infrastructure like land, power, data centers, GPUs bundled in like long-term leasing contracts, right? So there's kind of an interesting category that is coming up. It's more like uh, packaged AI factories, you would say, right? Instead of building
Mhm.
software ecosystems, companies like Brookfield and Blackstone a couple of months back, they are actually selling physical bottlenecks of AI like land, electricity, data center capacity, capital, and this I feel is like kind of interesting in terms of I never thought we always think about package solution and moving up the value chain. We are actually going the other way around because of the demand that is driving it, right? So
Mhm.
there's monetization model that can be salvaged at every stage, and that's kind of what I kind of felt right now with this new category that is coming up. Right? So that that was I feel interesting. We'll see where it lands.
Right, right. Yeah, I think there's a lot happening there. Let's get back into our the other category, the interesting category of the product launches. I know, Manjeet, you're also I was just reading through some one of the article that you wrote on the Cloudbot. Do you want to
Mm.
talk about this? I think on the interesting aspects that are going in the product launches. I know apart from that, there's a
Yeah,
lot happening with the Fujitsu launched an enterprise-grade generative AI
right,
platform,
right.
and Google DeepMind with Boston Dynamics. There's a lot happening. But I think this interesting thing that I know you were writing this article, and I believe, Lukas, you were also mentioning briefly about this Cloudbot. So you want to get
Yeah.
started on that, Manjit?
Yeah, no, I think maybe one category should I, what's the hottest AI project in that given month or a given week? So it happens to be, and it's funny, it was Claude Code, was winning the
Yes.
mind share. And then like if I, during all the, holiday break, I think and then until mid-January.
Mm-hmm.
And then comes almost 8 days ago, people suddenly kind of, everybody started to like install. There's a couple of, AI influencers. They put out, good videos. And I don't know, sometimes how this kind of, AI viral moment happens through starts with Twitter, goes to YouTube's and podcast, and then all the big guys picks it up, this guy or AI Kazar, and like everybody kind of starts tweeting, and then it becomes the thing, right? But and then I was thinking about what really happened just in last 72 4 hours. Project got so popular, 70,000 star reviews on GitHub, and then people downloading, and then like, oh, you needed stronger hardware, just like your router you can buy in a Mac Mini and blah, So I tried it by myself as well in a separate
Mm-hmm.
environment because I'm like shit scared that I can't give my password to this guy, but just to see how it works, and then I think the real, if you see the point I was making earlier, right? When if you saw the movie Her, or like this
Right.
real idea of a personal your assistant, or what could Siri or these even should have been. I think this has the most number of flavors in a way. It has long-term memory, and you can communicate through multiple channels. This messaging, and then it can let it run. The so I think that this guy, he just kind of, I'm guessing, built it as kind of a fun project, and now it picked up like wildfire. My prediction is what will happen is, I'm not sure if this project will be the winner, but this idea, well, somebody will package like Google or Clark, Anthropic. They will package it in a way with more guardrails and more security, and then so that will be more general. But I think the real, when it comes down to real kind of a device that I always look for, like, okay, this thing has to come in a device. So let's see. I know OpenAI, has been talking about this, Johnny and team, and so. But this is good validation. The one thing that will come out from this is there's a lot of ideas, use cases that will get validated through this project, and then somebody will package it in a real vertical solutions, whether it's Apple or Google, and then let's see. So that's kind of my take.
Okay. So coming to you, Lukas, I know you were briefly talking about that in your notes as well. Either CloudBot, or do you want to pick up any other interesting product launches that you want to talk about in this month?
Well, I think Claudebot is where the world needs to go. I think that is where people will really start to create a sense of what AI can do for the world and for them once it succeeds. Right now, it's like too nerdy. It's like it's not like an easy experience to set it up and so forth. But as Manjeet said, that's the future. It will happen, and we have line on sight on what's going to happen. I will also say something extremely boring, but very, very non-controversial. That's hugely important. We see that currently every AI lab is adding capabilities to create old artifacts, whether it's Word, Excel, PowerPoint. And those things are getting remarkably good. And here's my controversial take. I do believe that this is hugely important, will make a lot of money, but that's not the end state, right? So CloudBot is already like we see where everything is going. An integration of AI to build the same stuff we had before, just much faster and maybe prettier and whatnot, that will just go away. And I think right now we're doing it because we want to play it safe. But ultimately, the artifacts in which we communicate value will not remain to be PowerPoint, I would say, or other, and I'm not trying to throw any particular company under the bus, but I truly believe there's only a few things will stand the test of time. And it will be not like the current set of the typical artifacts you find in a big organization. So that's, I think, for me, like what's interesting is that we haven't yet really seen, at least in the workspace, the line of sight to what the future will look like. I mean, obviously, the agents in terms of like Word and whatever, they will be there, but they will go away in a couple of years. That's my bet, and I think that is hugely exciting.
I think interesting that you brought this up, Lukas. I think last week I know there is this whole month, I think there's many of us have been tuning into these conversations at Davos and also the CES show in Vegas, and there's a lot of interesting talks, right? And one of these conversations as well, like what you mentioned, interestingly strikes me that until now in 2024 and 2025, it was initially with the text generation, then later on 2025 was more of code generation, and now we are getting into a stage where you can help the knowledge worker a lot more, or a product manager a lot more, on generating these, like what you're mentioning, PowerPoint decks, or generating the Word documents, or generating these Excels. So agents getting to do a lot more. So this generation of these kind of activities will be much more. It'll be interesting to see how soon it will be achieved, but sometime in this year, I think I'm pretty sure that it will be there. So coming to you, Sesh, I think what is your take on the month of Jan and the interesting category of product launches? What is that one thing that really strikes
Yeah,
you?
of course, there was a lot of talk about physical AI at CES. NVIDIA, I think, announced some robotic models, right? And I mean, that's been there all over, more or less, right? But the one thing which I felt was interesting in terms of more like a even more than a product launch from a move perspective, right? I feel many of you might have noticed Google launched what is called the UCP, Universal Commerce Protocol, or Unified Commerce Protocol. I think it's Universal Commerce Protocol, right? That was kind of an interesting move, I felt. Unified Commerce Protocol. That was an interesting move, I feel, overall, because this opens up an open standard that defines how AI agents, retailers, payment systems, platforms, all of them communicate, right? And if you think about it, the monetization model for AI has still been uh, not clear, and AI this kind of definitively creates a move in that direction, right? In some sense, there has been A to A model, MCP protocol, all of those things, but now we are actually really getting into a unified commerce communication protocol that Google is trying to push, right? So that means like inventory systems, pricing engines, logistics, fulfillment, delivery, payment, all of them can be kind of that interoperability is trying to get solved for agent to agent communication, right? And of course, Google has its own interest here. Like in some sense, it will displace the Amazon marketplace or anybody else making the first move. It's almost like how Android and iOS became the standard, and then Google is able to influence around it with that. So that is that is the I think the interesting announcement for me. Uh, so commerce can easily shift from a value to the customer. Commerce can shift from human workflows to autonomous multi-agent workflows. That of course is known, but of course uh, there's an undercurrent of how Google is going to use this um, overall, right? So it'll help you discover products easily. So from search to discovery becomes easy, and then you are able to manage carts, apply loyalty rewards, execute payments, handle shipments, returns, support, all of this without leaving your search interface, which is good. But then it's going to be driven mostly by Google. And of course, it's going to add some secret sauce along with like maybe Google Checkout will come in, Google Wallet will come in. So the various monetization model and then recommendation engine, which is what Google makes money out of, will become predominant, or it kind of, I wouldn't say predominant, it kind of becomes natural fast follow as a result of Google trying to create this middleware for global commerce, right? So I feel that was an interesting move. Um, so I would be interested, and also if you see, obviously people like Shopify or Amazon, they will be taking they'll be more alert on this. Interestingly, Salesforce also announced support for UCP. I know Manjeet and team might have known about it. What what will be interesting is that can any people like Amazon do anything about it? It will be almost like what HTTP did for web, right? It's
Right.
unavoidable uh, because it will have a network effect, and then what will be the counter action is something interesting to watch, right? So that I felt is an interesting announcement. It was expected that something is going to happen with Google, but so soon, and then seeing how they are going to drive adoption will be interesting.
Right, right. Glad that you brought this up. Any of you, Lukas or Manjeet, do you want to uh, take on this one and talk about it, or shall we
Yeah.
continue to our?
No, so I think let's talk about data, right?
Mhm.
I'm sure you guys also work in some intersection of data, and then and one thing I want to touch on is one of my current initiative is observability. Okay, so agent observability, and then if you expand that into multi-agents, multi-agent across platforms, right? So that's kind of we talked earlier. That's where I think in 2026 things will go. And one interesting learning we have, and then now everybody is kind of talking about, is this agent thrives if you ground this agent into your historical telemetry data.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what that means is, something like, knowledge graph. Okay. You have enterprise knowledge, you can create knowledge graph and glean and see what kind of monetize that. But now if you can start to capture this agent traces, this historical, how agent did a task in the past, and if you have enough of that volume, and if you can construct a context graph. So I don't know if it showed up in your LinkedIn feed. So many people in the last 30 days, everybody started to write about this kind of, they gave it a kind of new name. Because we talk, as you're like, hey, just like prompt engineering, right? You have context engineering. So what context this agent need so that they can become more and more autonomous? So the need for human in the loop, how you will reduce that is if you have the historical decision traces, an agent can see, oh, this in this workflow, this went to the human approval, and this is where the exception was. So you can really push the boundaries of your automation using these agents. So now I think if any company was working on data or BI or ATL, now everybody's saying, oh, we will build that. And then we have some layers. And then, so I think it's interesting. I don't think it will go that way. There'll definitely be consolidation in this data space. And if you can see, Snowflake acquired Observe AI, and then, right, because like, oh, we have the data lakes. But so if you can provide you monitoring or observability, it's a very natural extension. So I think there will still be consolidation. As a customer, honestly, for me, let's say if I'm building, if I can have a single lake for my observability, for my security observability, and for my data observability, that will be, I would say, a golden path for me. But I think not sure if it'll be a single lake scenario. So I definitely, somebody will, at least one or two startup. And then, let's say in our case also, we have some interesting assets like Informatica and Tableau and Data Cloud. And so I think kind of coming from a great strength, we will also try to build, but data and AI. So context graphs. So that's kind of what's.
I want to follow up just one little idea because I think what Manjeet said is very important. I think what's also important to say is if you're using exactly the same agent as everybody else, per definition, you will not have differentiation or an advantage. So if people today talk about agents will be better, even if they're better, they still will need the context and the guardrails of how people want things to be done or companies want to be represented. So even if this succeeds wildly, this is an unsolved problem that I think is still underestimated, because to feel truly represented, whether it's a company, a person, or even just like to be different in terms of hoping to get an advantage, this problem needs to be like tackled. And we haven't yet seen any clear, I will repeat myself, I sound like a broken record, but we don't have line of sight in terms of what the solution could be.
Right. We're only talking about MD files these days and get excited. Hey, this will be there. But to me, I mean, you can put so much, but really relationship graph that you need between object and people and companies and customers and so I think but I think let's see. To me, I think this it goes without saying that AI will be as powerful as kind of data you feed into. So anybody who maintains that system of record and this engagement layer data on the top, I think will continue to have the differentiation.
Right. So let's continue with you, Manjeet. I think let's get into the other category about the ecosystem and the partnerships. I know there's a lot happening out there. Finally, Apple and Google, I think they finalized a multi-year partnership to integrate their Gemini models into the future Apple AI capabilities. And they have now a revamped Siri experience. And then there are a lot of other deals, right? I think with ServiceNow, I think Anthropic now partnering with left, right, and center with many other firms like ServiceNow and others, and Google
Right.
the same thing. So what's your take on this category and what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one lens I'm looking at it for, hey, what are the most popular interfaces where billions of people are using it? And so as you mentioned, I think if you look at Android and iOS, so it looks like iOS was earlier going with ChatGPT, but now they decided to go to, I think, Gemini. So I think that's fair to me, which means that Gemini will be the model powering up all pretty much 80% of the devices in the world, right? That gives an unprecedented advantage to Google. The second one is browser, right? We talked about agentic browser, and then, right, because that's where 3, 4, 5 billion people on the internet then we use, and then a bunch of other browser came along. But I think now Google moved fast enough now, and Chrome, I don't see a need to use Comet and others. In fact, today they announced Gemini right in part of the same as what kind of Comet and these other guys were doing. So, and I think that's the reality when we don't need 10 browsers. To me, if one gives me, there's of course we need tabs, but then search, and then I have the assistant right away. I think that'll be good enough. So I think one is this kind of the interface. I tend to think about the future of UI, where people will be spending, and then right. And I think that when I think about product like Slack or Team, and then because that's another one, right? If you think about enterprise, that's where again billion plus users in these platforms. So one obvious way is you build agents within these system. You can summarize your channels and all this. I think that's the obvious one. But I'm very passionate about this idea of super agent that can sit into this main channel, for example, Slack. And then no matter what kind of questions I have to my IT, to my HR team, to my legal, and then I just talk to one agent that takes care of all the routing it into the right people, get me help, and then whether it's help in automated way or help by those teams behind the scene. So these are the three surfaces I'm kind of constantly watching what's happening, what will happen to the device that I carry, what happened to the browser where I spend 7, 8 hours every day, and what will happen to the chat interface where I work and collaborate with the team. And then, so that's kind of where my head is.
All right, right. So coming to you, Lukas, any thoughts in this space of ecosystem and the partnerships and all going on? I think this is a very interesting take where Manjeet was taking us through the different browser wars that's happening. Of course, people like me, I still use a lot of different browsers, but there might be at some point of time I'll stop using any of these.
There is, maybe
consult.
I'm now committing a sin here, but I will, like, in a way reveal that I'm old because I want my browser not to browse by itself, or at least I want to have a browser that just does what the old browsers were meant to be. Right now, it's essentially a drop-in replacement for an operating system. You can do anything you want on your computer, from coding to listening to music to watching everything. And I'm like, okay, that's not bad. But I think I will at some point, just like people want the dumb phones, at some point I want the dumb browser. Let's see when that happens. But in terms of partnerships, I will be very quick. Everybody was sure that Gemini collaborating with Apple was simply because they already had like a very trusted relationship. Apple was already receiving tons of money from Google. So I guess it was easy to connect those relationships and then have Gemini be the Siri replacement. Now, I read, and this is not corroborated, right? It's a little bit like what the Twitterverse and like the blogs are saying, that Apple wanted to work with Anthropic and Claude was actually the better model, but they couldn't agree on the terms. And I find that hugely interesting because if that's true, that would to me also mean that this match made in heaven between Google and Apple might be transitory. And Apple might actually figure out that the most important real estate, namely what AI is running on your phone, should be a place of competition and not lock themselves into any one vendor, right? And I would even go so far, because we talked about Claudebot and so forth, that the optimal strategy would be to not pick favorites, even if it means more money for Apple, but let people bring whatever AI they want to bring. Why? Because I think as AI matures, there will be more, people tend to say parasocial relationships, but I would say just flat out preferences. If your AI knows you, I want it to be consistent, whether I'm on the desktop or on my phone. And so I feel like there's a little bit of, okay, this is the first inning of that game. It's not yet over. And I hope that the current way the game is played is not like how it will end, right? So that's my take on ecosystems and juicy partnerships of billions of dollars.
True. I think very well said. I think Apple is kind of coming up maybe with a different play. We don't know. I think we have to wait and watch. So coming to you, Sesh, what is your take on this category of ecosystems and partnerships?
Yeah, probably extending on whatever Lukas in Manjeet said, right? It also drives home the point that you cannot have one single AI. Number two is AI with all the cloud costs exploding. AI on the edge is more critical to the user. That means you, again, coming back to, it cannot be one single AI because you are going to have a vertical specific AI model getting built, right? There may be HIPAA compliant AI model that is built by one vendor versus like a Meta could have a different model for shopping assistant and all of those things. So ultimately, your data and then how you marry with the data that's in the cloud is where the real and how you build those inferences is more important than actually having a single AI sitting on the thing. Whichever model for that particular vertical use case on the edge is able to deliver the results is what will probably drive the value to the user. So my 2 cents there.
Sure. Beautiful, beautiful. I know we are almost getting to the top of the hour. I think I want to go into this interesting bucket, I think, which we don't spend enough time, but I believe this AI ethics, policy, and governance slowly is getting more and more interesting and important as we speak. Apart from US and China, I think South Korea is another big, very big market. And I believe South Korea's AI Basic Act, which came into force, they are kind of introducing mandatory AI watermarking, risk assessments, and compliance obligations for any of these high impact AI systems. Of course, these high impact AI systems, I think the benchmarks are very high though. But at least if you see in that aspect, across the globe, now these big economies and these global, these different governments, I think they started thinking. I think earlier it was more about thinking, but now we do now even acting, right? I think you don't know how and where AI is already embedded into your processes. So there's a lot more going to happen. So what is your take? Maybe I'll start with you, Sesh.
You caught me off guard there. I don't have a position there. Uh, uh, I'll probably pass the buck to somebody else.
Sure. I think Lukas or Manjeet, who wants to pick it up? I know this is a topic which is coming on and off
Right.
again and again. It gets more interesting as we go.
Yeah. So I think I care about the lens. Like if I'm a creator or like, if I'm, let's say I have some my own skills and if AI is really putting me out of the job, what it means to me. So what I'm noticing is, in fact, even there's one of the California Act went into starting from January. So it's like, hey, if you use any data to train the models, then you should be more tell us. rather than say, hey, I use the internet data. No, you have to tell whether Wikipedia was the source or whether, so you know what was kind of, and to me that's important because um, you have to draw boundaries somewhere. But at the same time, if you look at the stance from Trump administration and others, and they're like, hey, we don't want AI to, progress to slow down. So they are coming up with some policies or, to block even these state level frictions that might come into play. I saw, I think in Davos also, this was the theme. Hey, what about this kind of governance policies? And then nothing specific. I think I captured kind of, to whether it's other than, hey, they'll figure it out. It's not slow down. And all the geopolitical, what China is ahead and we are ahead. I think so. Everybody's a little bit of loose right now. Of course, our friend in Europe and UK, they are paranoid. They're like, we should we should slow down. So, kind of that's what I'm observing.
Okay,
I would
coming
just
to you,
quickly
Lukas.
weigh in
Yeah.
saying I don't believe that watermarks will work out. I think that the basic AI Act, as introduced in South Korea, is a valiant effort. But I don't care so much about much of what was discussed. I think for
Right.
me, the one important boundary, the line in the sand, and there I'm with Noval Harari, like
Yeah.
a famous historian.
Right.
I think we need to enforce, and there will be no way of proving it, but we need to enforce it very strictly in whatever way we can, that AI will not get to pretend that they're human. I think we need to ensure
Right.
that when we talk to other human, that there is that this trust is not broken. If no matter what communication it is, if an AI gets away with pretending to be a human, I think that's Pandora's box. And
Right.
I don't believe in a lot of alignment between different countries. And it feels like everything is drifting into hard power and more antagonism in the future. But if I had like one wish for regulation to actually have teeth and work out, I don't want AI to pretend it's human when it's not. And that will be, I hope that this is something that is directionally going in this future with this act and with other states following at least that.
Right. Right. So, any closing remarks from you? I think we'll start with you, Lukas. And what are you looking forward the month of February?
Ooh, honestly, I'm really interested in what happens this year with open source models and non-American models. I'm really I'm not a betting man, but we had essentially like always a 6 month delay between the most capable models from the US, because let's be honest, everybody else is like it's they might have an office somewhere else, but it's the brain trust is an American company. 6 months to mostly Chinese models, in all fairness. Okay. For reasons I will not go into today, maybe next time, I would hope that this cuts down from 6 to 3, 2, 1 months. Maybe even we see a model that is not and typically like the FANG company type of background is succeeding and being, even if it's just for a couple of days, at the top of the leaderboards. I think there is a couple of new models just ante portas coming out soon, and I'm wildly excited about that this might actually pan out.
Okay. Over to you, Sesh. Any closing remarks, and what are you looking forward?
Um, Broadly for this year, I think there's always been this projection that physical AI will be the dominant story. Of course, looking forward to it. I do not know what physical AI would really mean. Is it going to go humanoids, or it's more like, as we heard in the internet age, that fridge will order your milk. Maybe there'll be like a fridge sending a humanoid going to the shop and driving an autonomous car and then getting the milk or something like that. I don't know how that's going to map. So of course, for the we saw teasers of that during CES. Along the way, I'm sure we'll see more realistic thing. But I feel as we get ahead, agentic commerce and AI monetization wars will be the center stage. I feel um, at least in the starting next month, and of course rest of the year, Meta rolled out agentic commerce tools and APIs recently. Google launched ACP. So that's where I think we will be seeing a lot more interesting use cases and solutions coming out.
And over to you,
Right.
Manjeet. Any closing thoughts, and what are you looking forward? And also maybe any fitness tip as well, as always.
Yeah. No, let me end with a little bit of this fitness and wellness theme. What's happening is we are going into a more deterministic world. We talked about too much swing in, let's say if you are invested in stock, or suddenly Clawbot is becoming a hottest topic. And I think the only way is we have to get used to it. It's easier said than done. I'm a big fan of starting your morning the right way. I have a 9-minute practice I'll share that I use these days to kind of keep myself sane in the morning. So 3 minutes of breathing as soon as I wake up, and then 3 minutes of gratitude, whatever. Usually I like, I'm thankful for my family, my kids, my own health, of course. And then given that so much going on, my personal project and my 2026 goals and work, and I'm like, okay, what is the one thing I should try to move a little forward today? And I find this helpful quickly in the sense before I, open up my phone or kind of get started by my day. So I think it is kind of, I want to build it as a muscle, because if this world will change so much, and, unexpected thing happens from government and whatnot, and like, how can I, observe that, and a little bit of more reflective rather than reactive. And then, that's kind of what I'm up to these days.
Beautiful. As always, great talking with you all, folks.
Yeah.
Looking forward again for the next month.
Awesome, guys.
As we wrap up this January 2026 AI Roundup, one thing is clear. AI is no longer just about innovation. It's about infrastructure, power, trust, and governance at scale. The big questions now aren't, can we build AI, but who controls it, how it's governed, and who's accountable when it acts? Thanks for tuning in to this month's conversation with Raghu and the XTraw AI Roundtable, Manjeet, Lukas, and Sesh. If this episode sparked new questions, challenged assumptions, or helped you connect the dots, make sure to subscribe, share it with your network, and join us next month as we continue tracking how AI is reshaping enterprises, ecosystems, and society. Happy predicting the future with AI technologies. Until then, stay curious, stay critical, and stay XTraw.